The sun beat down on Jamal Carter as he leaned against the brick wall of Martinez liquor store, watching the steady stream of customers entering and leaving the building. His worn Lakers cap pulled low over his eyes. He maintained his cover while documenting the gang's operations in his mind. The store served as a front for one of Los Angeles's most active drug distribution points. And after 3 months of careful infiltration, Jamal was finally close enough to gather crucial intelligence. Through his peripheral vision, he tracked the movements of the gang's foot soldiers. 2 guys posted at the corner, another manning the store's entrance, and several more inside, all following a precise rotation schedule. Each wore red bandanas, marking their allegiance to the neighborhood's dominant crew. Jamal had learned their patterns well enough to spot the subtle hand signals they used to communicate about potential threats or incoming deliveries. His burner phone buzzed with a message from his handler. Meeting with Kane confirmed for 2 p.m. Jamal's heart rate picked up slightly. Kane Thompson was the gang's lieutenant, and this meeting could provide the breakthrough the DEA had been waiting for. He'd spent weeks building credibility as a low-level dealer to get this opportunity. Inside the store's back room, Kane sat behind a metal desk, his massive frame making the furniture look almost comically small. The meeting started routinely, discussions about territory, profit margins, and distribution schedules. But then Kane mentioned a name that made Jamal's blood run cold. Little Mike from 43rd Street. Michael Williams. They'd grown up together in the same housing project, shared meals when times were tough, played basketball in the same youth league. Now Little Mike was Kane's right-hand man, and he was walking through the door. Jamal maintained his composure, but his mind raced. Would Mike recognize him? They hadn't seen each other in 15 years, since Jamal's family moved away after his brother was killed in a drive-by. Mike's eyes narrowed slightly as he entered, and Jamal saw the flash of recognition cross his face. But instead of exposing him, Mike simply nodded and took his position beside Kane. The tension in the room was palpable as they discussed an upcoming shipment. Jamal could feel Mike's eyes on him throughout the meeting, analyzing every movement, every word. Just as the meeting was wrapping up, multiple police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Kane's phone erupted with warning messages from his lookouts. Cops! Coming in hot! The room erupted into chaos as everyone scrambled to dispose of evidence and escape. Jamal moved with the crowd, maintaining his cover while trying to position himself for a clean exit. But as he reached the alley behind the store, bright lights flooded the area. LAPD, nobody move. The police had surrounded the building, cutting off all escape routes. In the confusion, Jamal caught Mike's "I won last time." There was something in that look, recognition, betrayal, perhaps even a hint of respect. But before Jamal could process it, he was tackled from behind by an officer. His face pressed against the rough asphalt. He heard the distinctive click of handcuffs closing around his wrists. "Got another one," the officer shouted, roughly pulling Jamal to his feet. As they led him toward a waiting patrol car, he saw Detective Marcus Harlan watching from nearby, a calculated look in his eyes. Jamal knew his cover was intact. His DEA credentials were deep undercover, accessible only through specific channels. But something about Harlan's expression made him uneasy. This arrest wasn't part of any coordinated operation he knew about, and now he was caught in a dangerous game between the gang he'd infiltrated, the corrupt police force he'd heard rumors about, and his own undercover mission. Detective Marcus Harlan stands in the precinct's evidence room, holding a small bag of cocaine in his gloved hand. His team watches nervously as he plants the drugs in Jamal's jacket pocket. "This makes the arrest stick," he says firmly, silencing any doubts. The bust went wrong. They weren't supposed to raid during an active DEA operation, but nobody knew until it was too late. Now they're covering their tracks. Jamal sits handcuffed to a metal chair in the interrogation room, his face illuminated by a single harsh light. His training kicks in as he maintains his composure. "I'm telling you, check with the DEA office. Agent James Morrison will verify my identity." His voice remains steady, professional, but the officers ignore his requests. Marcus enters, tossing a file onto the metal table. "Found some interesting items in your possession," he says, sliding crime scene photos across the table. The planted drugs are clearly visible in the images. Jamal's jaw tightens. He recognizes a setup when he sees one. "Those aren't mine, detective. You and I both know where they came from." Jamal maintains eye contact, his voice low and controlled. Marcus pauses, studying his face. Something about the suspect's confidence unsettles him. The interrogation continues for hours. Outside the room, Officer Rodriguez approaches Marcus. "Detective, something's not adding up. The surveillance footage from the liquor store shows inconsistencies with our report." Marcus dismisses him with a wave, but the seed of doubt takes root. Later that evening, Marcus reviews witness statements at his desk. Mrs. Chun, who owns the shop next to Martinez Liquor, described seeing Jamal regularly over the past months. "He stopped two young men from robbing my store last week," her statement reads. "He's not like the others." The account doesn't match their profile of a typical gang member. In the break room, Marcus overhears two officers discussing Jamal's arrest. "Did you see how he handled himself?" Almost like he's had law enforcement training, the comment catches Marcus's attention. He returns to his desk and begins quietly pulling records. A call comes in from Central Booking about Jamal's fingerprints. The results are blocked, classified. Marcus's unease grows. Standard gang members don't have classified records. He thinks back to the arrest, remembering Jamal's controlled responses, his specific request for DEA contact. Marcus drives home that night, his mind racing. If Jamal is really DEA, this isn't just a routine drug bust gone wrong. It's a major problem. His team's history of improving evidence to secure convictions could finally catch up with them. The department can't afford another scandal, not after last year's internal affairs investigation. He pulls over to the side of the road, rubbing his temples. 20 years on the force, built on a foundation of small compromises that seemed necessary at the time. Each planted evidence, each falsified report justified by getting criminals off the streets. But this time feels different. Back at the station, Jamal waits in his cell, watching the officers' shifting dynamics. He notices Marcus's troubled expression when he passes by, the whispered conversations among the team. The detective's confident facade is cracking. Jamal decides to press his advantage during the next interrogation, dropping subtle hints about his law enforcement connections. The night shift brings new testimony from the liquor store arrests. A teenage witness describes seeing Jamal talk down a potentially violent confrontation last month. More pieces that don't fit their forced narrative. Marcus sits at his desk, surrounded by growing evidence of their mistake, knowing each passing hour makes their situation worse. 12-year-old Jamal Carter stands in his childhood bedroom, watching police lights flash through the window. Below, officers outline his brother's body with chalk. Another drive-by, another victim of the neighborhood's endless cycle of violence. That night, he makes a decision that will shape his future. The memory fades as Jamal sits in his cell, tracing the concrete walls with his eyes. 20 years later, he's on the other side of the law, though not in the way these officers think. He remembers his mother's face when he announced he was joining the DEA, proud but terrified. "You're going to fight them from the inside?" she'd asked, understanding immediately. His training at Quantico taught him to handle situations like this, but theory differs from reality. The walls of his cell feel closer each hour, especially knowing corrupt officers walk freely outside. He thinks about his childhood friend Mike, now deeply embedded in the gang. Their paths diverged but led them both here. Meanwhile, in the police station's break room, Officer Sarah Chun confronts Marcus. "The evidence doesn't add up, detective. The surveillance footage, the witness statements, we're missing something." Other officers nod in agreement. The usual solidarity of the force shows cracks. Marcus dismisses them, but their words echo his own doubts. He remembers his early days on the force, before cutting corners became routine. Back when the badge meant protecting people, not protecting themselves. His team's nervous glances tell him they feel it too. This case is different. In his cell, Jamal carefully tears a strip from his paper cup, using years of training to compose a coded message. He knows his DEA partner monitors specific channels: Red Eagle grounded, Fox Den compromised, clock running. Simple words that will tell Morrison everything about his situation and the corruption he's uncovered. Officer Rodriguez collects trash from the cells, unknowingly carrying Jamal's message. The cup finds its way to the dumpster behind the station, where a homeless man, one of Morrison's longtime informants, regularly searches for recyclables. The system works because of its simplicity. Back in the station, tension builds among Marcus's team. Officer Chun pulls security footage, questioning the timeline they created. Officer Thompson mentions inconsistencies in the evidence log. The carefully constructed narrative begins to unravel. "We need to talk about Carter," Officer Wilson tells Marcus privately. "Chin's right. His behavior patterns don't match our usual suspects. He's too controlled, too professional." Marcus dismisses him, but immediately pulls Jamal's booking photos, studying them with new eyes. Late that night, Jamal lies on his cell bunk, mapping the station's routines. Guard changes, camera blind spots, staff habits. Everything a trained agent notices automatically. He knows Morrison will receive his message soon. The question is whether he can stay safe until then. The night shift brings whispered conversations among officers. They've worked with Marcus for years, trusted his judgment, followed his lead in improving cases. But doubt spreads like a virus. Officer Chun requests a transfer to another precinct. Officer Wilson starts documenting everything in his personal notebook. Marcus sits alone in his office, surrounded by case files and growing paranoia. If Jamal is DEA, their entire operation could collapse. Careers would end. Some might face charges. The weight of years of compromised evidence and false reports threatens to crush them all. Marcus spreads surveillance photos across his desk at 2 a.m., the empty station allowing him to work undisturbed. Something catches his eye. Timestamps from different cameras don't match the official report. He pulls up booking records, noting Jamal's unusual calm during processing. Most suspects show fear or anger. Jamal showed patience. Another detail emerges. During the raid, Jamal moved tactically, like someone with training, not the chaotic scramble of a typical gang member. Marcus reviews the liquor store's security footage again, focusing on Jamal's positioning during routine drug deals. He consistently maintains sight lines to all exits, standard law enforcement behavior. His phone buzzes, a text from Officer Chin. "Found something. Meet me in the evidence room." Inside, she shows him the original unlogged camera footage from the raid. The planted drugs aren't visible in Jamal's jacket until after his arrest. Their carefully constructed case begins to crumble. Meanwhile, Jamal receives confirmation of his message's delivery through a subtle signal, a specific guard rotation pattern that Morrison established years ago for emergencies. Now he needs to create an opportunity. The night shift brings fewer guards, better chances. He studies his cellmate, a drunk driver named Pete, noticing his hair-trigger temper. During morning meal distribution, Jamal carefully times his movements, bumping Pete's elbow. Coffee spills across the cell floor. "Watch it, man." Pete shoves him hard. Jamal allows himself to stumble backward, using the momentum to knock over their breakfast trays. The noise attracts guards. Pete, already agitated, throws the first punch. Jamal blocks defensively, making sure the fight looks real while avoiding serious injury. Guards rush to separate them, creating exactly the confusion Jamal needs. In the chaos, he spots the cell block's camera blind spots, noting guard positions and response patterns. He's orchestrating a symphony of distraction, each movement calculated. Back in his office, Marcus receives a call from a former partner now working narcotics. "Harlan, that bust at Martinez's. Word is it interrupted something big. Federal level big." The warning confirms Marcus's growing suspicions about Jamal's true identity. He pulls Department of Justice records, searching for any connections. Most of Jamal's background information is suspiciously clean, too clean, like someone scrubbed it. Marcus remembers similar patterns with previous undercover operations. The detention center erupts into chaos as fights break out in multiple cells, a chain reaction from Jamal's initial altercation. Guards scramble to maintain order, their usual patterns disrupted, exactly as he planned. But he knows he has only one shot at this. Through his cell window, Jamal watches the guard rotation change, noting their increased agitation from the fights. Tired, distracted guards make mistakes. He sees Officer Chin passing by, her expression troubled as she carries a file folder. She pauses, making brief eye contact. Something in her manner suggests she's questioning the official narrative. Marcus stares at his evidence board, connecting threads between the arrest, the inconsistencies, and the rumors of federal involvement. His phone keeps buzzing with messages from nervous officers, each finding new problems with their story. The carefully constructed wall of lies begins to show fatal cracks. Marcus sits in his car outside Kane Thompson's legitimate business, a struggling boxing gym. Through his surveillance photos, he spots Officer Wilson, who's supposed to be off duty, entering through the back door. The pieces start connecting. Wilson's unexplained new car, his frequent disappearances during shifts, the selective enforcement in Kane's territory. Inside the gym, Kane meets with his associates, unaware that Marcus is photographing every face that enters. A familiar detective from Narcotics Division appears, then a sergeant from Vice. Marcus's stomach turns. The corruption runs deeper than he imagined. He begins to understand why Jamal's undercover operation targeted this specific area. Meanwhile, Jamal executes his escape plan during a prisoner transfer. The morning's fights created enough chaos to force a schedule change. During the transfer, he dislocates his own thumb, an old trick that lets him slip one handcuff. When the transport van hits a pre-planned road construction delay, he makes his move. The escape is clean, practiced. No guards injured, minimal property damage. He disappears into the maze of alleyways he memorized during his months undercover. But now he's running from both sides. The police who framed him and Kane's gang who'll want revenge for his betrayal. In a safe house known only to his DEA handlers, Jamal finally makes a secure call to his family. His mother answers on the first ring. She's been waiting. "Baby, I saw the news. Are you okay?" Her voice trembles. He keeps the conversation vague, knowing both police and gang members might be monitoring his family. "I'm fine, Mama. Just some work complications. Keep the doors locked and stay with Aunt Ruby for a while." He doesn't mention the gang, the corrupt cops, or the fact that his childhood friend Mike might come looking for answers. His mother understands the unspoken warnings. She's lived this life before. Back at the station, Marcus watches the chaos unfold after Jamal's escape. Internal Affairs arrives, asking questions about the original arrest. Officer Wilson nervously shreds documents. The narcotics detective Marcus photographed at Kane's gym starts calling in favors, trying to locate Jamal. Jamal moves through the city's shadows, using his training and street knowledge to stay invisible. He spots Mike's lieutenants searching known hideouts, their red bandanas visible from safe distances. The gang's network is extensive, but Jamal knows their patterns, their weaknesses. In his temporary shelter, he reviews the evidence he's gathered over months. Photos of police payoffs, recordings of deals, account numbers. The corrupt cops didn't just stumble into his DEA operation. They were part of his original target. The drug trade was just the surface of a deeper conspiracy. His burner phone vibrates. A message from Morrison. Package received. Hold position. The coded confirmation that his evidence reached the DEA. But he knows it's not enough. They need direct proof linking the corrupt officers to Kane's operation. Proof that even Internal Affairs can't ignore. Marcus, following his own investigation, discovers financial records showing suspicious deposits in several officers' accounts. The amounts coincide with major drug shipments through Kane's territory. The same territory where they arrested Jamal, where they planted evidence to maintain their cover. The web of corruption stretches wider each hour, pulling in more departments, more officers. Marcus realizes he's past the point of protecting his colleagues. This isn't about a single bad arrest anymore. It's about the entire system they've built, and it's starting to collapse. Marcus enters the precinct's locker room, confronting Officer Wilson and 3 other officers. "I know about the payments from Kane," he says quietly. The room temperature seems to drop. Wilson's hand moves subtly toward his weapon. "You really want to add that to your problems?" Marcus asks, revealing his phone, recording the conversation. "Think about your pension, Harlan," Wilson responds. "Think about your family. Some things are better left alone." The threat hangs in the air. Other officers begin filtering into the room, choosing sides without words. The divide in the force becomes physical. half the room backing away from Wilson's group. Meanwhile, Jamal sets up operations in an abandoned mechanics shop. The walls are covered with surveillance photos, financial records, and patrol schedules. He's mapping the connection between Kane's operation and the corrupt officers, discovering patterns in drug shipment times and conveniently timed police patrols. His DEA training helps him piece together the bigger picture. The corrupt officers aren't just taking bribes. They're actively protecting specific trafficking routes, redirecting investigations, and eliminating competition for Kane's organization. It's a sophisticated operation, hidden behind random drug busts and street-level arrests. In the station, Marcus finds his desk ransacked, case files missing. A note in his drawer reads, "Last warning." He notices Officer Chen watching from across the room, her expression worried. She slides him a USB drive when passing his desk. Copies of evidence she's been gathering since Jamal's arrest. A new police sweep moves through the neighborhood, supposedly looking for Jamal. But he recognizes the real purpose. They're clearing out potential witnesses, pressuring his old contacts. Through his binoculars, he spots Mike coordinating with the corrupt officers, pointing out specific locations to raid. The tension erupts when Marcus's team responds to a reported shooting. They arrive to find Jamal allegedly cornered in an abandoned building. But Marcus recognizes the setup. The responding units are all connected to Wilson, all on Kane's payroll. This isn't an arrest attempt, it's an elimination. Inside the building, Jamal hears them coming. He's counted 12 officers entering, recognized Wilson's voice giving orders. The building's blueprint is clear in his mind. 3 exits, 2 already blocked. They're not trying to arrest him. They're trying to end the threat he represents. Marcus makes a split-second decision. He calls dispatch, reporting shots fired at a different location, drawing away half the corrupt officers. It's a clear signal to Jamal and a definitive break from his former allies. There's no going back now for either of them. The confrontation turns violent. Wilson's team starts a fire to smoke out Jamal. Marcus, watching from his position, sees Kane's men approaching from the back, using the chaos as cover. The distinction between cops and criminals blurs completely as both groups converge on the building. Jamal moves silently through the smoke, using his training and knowledge of their tactics. He recognizes the pattern, the same one they used in other problematic arrests. Create chaos, eliminate the threat, blame it on gang violence. But this time, they're facing a trained federal agent who knows their playbook. Marcus steps into the open, weapon drawn. His choice is clear now. Let the corruption continue or help Jamal expose it all. The smoke swirls around him as he hears Wilson's team approaching from one side and Kane's men from the other. Everything hangs on his next move. Marcus raises his badge high, stepping between Wilson's team and the building entrance. "This stops now," he announces, his voice carrying authority developed over 20 years on the force. Wilson freezes, recognizing the shift in power. Other officers lower their weapons, uncertainty clear on their faces. Through the smoke, Jamal emerges from a side door, tactically positioning himself beside Marcus. Their eyes meet briefly, a silent agreement forming between the detective and the DEA agent. Marcus hands Jamal a spare weapon, making their alliance clear to everyone present. "I've got everything," Jamal says quietly. 3 months of surveillance, bank records, video recordings, every dirty deal, every payoff, every covered-up crime. Wilson's face pales as he realizes the extent of Jamal's operation. The corrupt officers start backing away, calculating their options. Together, Marcus and Jamal begin methodically documenting everything. They set up a secure location, coordinating with trusted officers from internal affairs. Evidence mounts, photos of officers meeting with Kane, recordings of payoff discussions, detailed financial trails connecting police brass to drug money. But Kane's organization doesn't sit idle. Drive-by shootings increase in frequency, targeting potential witnesses. Marcus's home is vandalized, his family forced to relocate. Jamal's mother reports suspicious men watching her house. The pressure builds from all sides. Then Jamal spots a familiar face in surveillance photos. Mike, his childhood friend, coordinating attacks on witnesses. The same kid who shared his lunch during tough times is now ordering hits. It's a harsh reminder of how their paths diverged after that fatal drive-by years ago. Mike's presence complicates everything. He knows Jamal's history, his family, his weaknesses. More importantly, he understands how Jamal thinks. The cat-and-mouse game becomes personal, with Mike anticipating Jamal's moves, forcing him to change tactics constantly. Marcus watches the psychological toll on Jamal as they review footage of Mike meeting with corrupt officers. "He was my best friend," Jamal says quietly, studying Mike's face on the screen. "Now he's trying to kill everyone I care about." The weight of betrayal hangs heavy in the room. Their investigation reveals Mike's rise through Kane's organization wasn't random. The corrupt officers groomed him, using his connection to Jamal's family to keep tabs on potential threats. Every childhood memory takes on a darker meaning as the truth emerges. The gang retaliates with increasing violence. 3 witnesses disappear in 1 week. Officer Chin's car explodes outside her apartment, a warning that silences several other officers ready to testify. The thin blue line becomes a noose, tightening around anyone who speaks up. Marcus and Jamal work through nights, building their case while watching their backs. They establish a network of trusted officers, creating secure channels for gathering evidence. But with each breakthrough, the danger grows. Mike's knowledge of Jamal's methods makes every move risky. The tension peaks when Mike sends a message through old neighborhood channels. "Remember Tommy's Corner, J Midnight?" It's a reference to their childhood hangout, an invitation that's equally likely to be reconciliation or execution. Jamal knows he has to go, even as Marcus argues against it. Jamal approaches Tommy's Corner at midnight, the old basketball court where he and Mike spent their youth. Mike stands alone, his red bandana visible under the flickering streetlight. For a moment, they're just 2 kids from the projects again, before badges and gangs complicated everything. "You could have come to me," Mike says, breaking the silence. "When you started this undercover work, we could have taken down Kane together, made things right in the neighborhood." His voice carries genuine pain, but Jamal spots the subtle hand signals to hidden gunmen in the shadows. "Like you made things right by having witnesses killed?" Jamal responds, carefully positioning himself with clear sight lines. "The Mike I knew wanted to change things, not become what killed my brother." The words hit home. Mike's expression flickers with remembered grief and guilt. Their conversation grows intense, memories of shared hardships mixing with current betrayals. Mike reveals his own struggles, how the corrupt officers recruited him after Jamal left, using their childhood connection as leverage. But when Jamal offers him a chance to make things right, to help expose everything, Mike makes his choice. The ambush springs instantly. Gunmen emerge from the shadows, but Jamal was prepared. The basketball court erupts in chaos as Marcus and his trusted officers appear from their hidden positions. Mike escapes in the confusion, leaving his men to face arrest, another betrayal to add to the list. Meanwhile, Marcus's deeper investigation into the department reveals a shocking truth. Captain Reynolds, his mentor of 20 years, orchestrated the entire corruption network. Bank records show Reynolds receiving massive payments since Kane's organization first gained power. The evidence is damning. Reynolds coordinated protection rackets, arranged strategic arrests of Kane's competitors, and supervised the systematic intimidation of witnesses. His position as captain provided the perfect cover, allowing him to direct investigations away from Kane's operations. Marcus confronts Reynolds in his office, recording the conversation. The captain's mask of integrity falls away, revealing cold calculation. "Everything I did built this department," Reynolds argues. "The funding, the equipment, the promotions, all possible because we understood how to work with reality." But as Marcus and Jamal compile their evidence, they realize they've stumbled into an even larger conspiracy. Reynolds isn't the top. There are connections to judges, prosecutors, even state officials. The corruption spreads like a cancer through the entire justice system. More officers come forward, breaking their silence. Each new testimony reveals another layer of corruption, another compromised operation. The thin blue line starts to crumble as honest cops realize the extent of the betrayal by their leaders. Marcus discovers his own career advancement was part of Reynolds' strategy, promoting officers who could be controlled, who had witnessed enough corruption to be compromised. Every commendation, every promotion carries the stain of manipulation. The trap is closing, but Reynolds makes one final move. He calls an emergency meeting of all involved officers, claiming to have a solution. Marcus and Jamal know it's likely an ambush, but they also know it's their best chance to gather everyone involved in one place. The stage is set for a final confrontation. The meeting location is the old Police Academy Gymnasium, a symbolic choice that isn't lost on anyone. Marcus and Jamal position their trusted officers strategically around the building while Captain Reynolds gathers his corrupt network inside. Kane arrives with his lieutenants, including Mike, everyone pretending this is a normal negotiation. Inside, the tension could be cut with a knife. 30 corrupt officers, Kane's entire leadership team, and various city officials fill the room. Reynolds stands at the podium, projecting confidence, but his eyes betray nervousness as he scans the crowd. He doesn't realize that every word is being recorded, every face captured by hidden cameras. Jamal makes his move, stepping out from the shadows. The room freezes as he walks to the center, his DEA badge clearly visible. "For 3 months, I've documented everything," he announces. "Every payoff, every murder, every corrupt judge and prosecutor who helped you." The evidence appears on the screen behind him. Surveillance photos, bank records, recorded conversations. Kane's men reach for weapons, but Marcus's team emerges from their positions, covering all exits. The corrupt officers find themselves caught between their loyalty to Reynolds and the realization that their careers are over. Some immediately surrender, others look to Reynolds for direction. Mike stands torn between his old friend and his current allegiance. Jamal addresses him directly. "Remember what we promised after my brother died? About making the neighborhood safe?" The words hang in the air as Mike's hand hovers near his weapon. The entire room watches this personal drama unfold against the larger crisis. Reynolds makes a desperate play, signaling his most loyal officers to take aggressive action. But they're outnumbered. More honest cops have arrived, responding to a silent alarm Marcus triggered. The gymnasium becomes a standoff between justice and corruption, with decades of police work hanging in the balance. Kane, seeing the situation deteriorate, attempts to distance himself from Reynolds. "The captain approached us," he claims, trying to save himself. "He orchestrated everything." Reynolds' face contorts with rage at the betrayal, and he draws his weapon, aiming at Kane. Chaos erupts. Shots are fired, people dive for cover. Through the mayhem, Mike unexpectedly tackles Reynolds, preventing him from shooting Kane but also saving Jamal, who was in the line of fire. The gesture speaks volumes about his final choice between past and present loyalties. The fight spreads through the gymnasium. Corrupt officers clash with honest ones. Gang members try to escape, and years of hidden tension explode into violence. Jamal and Marcus work in sync. Their temporary partnership, now a smooth collaboration born of necessity and mutual respect. Through the chaos, Reynolds manages to reach a side exit, but finds himself face-to-face with Officer Chun and a team of internal affairs agents. His expression crumbles as he realizes there's no escape, no more strings to pull, no more favors to call in. The battle ends as quickly as it began. The gymnasium floor is littered with dropped weapons and discarded police badges. Kane and his lieutenants are in custody. Corrupt officers face their former colleagues in handcuffs. Mike sits quietly in a corner, neither resisting nor trying to escape, his choice finally made. Jamal and Marcus stand amid the aftermath. Their mission nearly complete, but both knowing that cleaning up the department will take years. The real work, rebuilding trust, establishing new protocols, healing the community, is just beginning. 2 weeks later, the police station buzzes with activity as FBI agents conduct interviews and review files. Captain Reynolds and 28 officers face federal corruption charges. Kane and his organization's leadership are in federal custody, their network dismantled. The local news runs constant coverage of what they're calling the biggest police corruption scandal in Los Angeles history. Marcus sits at his desk, now acting captain, tasked with rebuilding the department. The trust of the community lies shattered, but small signs of hope emerge. Officer Chun leads a new integrity unit. Former corrupt officers' cases are under review, with dozens of wrongful convictions already overturned. The neighborhood starts to breathe easier, free from both corrupt police and gang control. Mike's cooperation proves crucial. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he provides detailed testimony about both the gang's operations and police corruption. His decision to help, inspired by Jamal's unwavering integrity, helps prosecutors build airtight cases against both Reynolds and Kane. Jamal receives commendation from the DEA, but the victory feels complicated. Walking through his old neighborhood, he sees familiar faces that now view him differently, not as a traitor, but as someone who fought for change. The local kids play basketball at Tommy's Corner again, no longer afraid of drive-by shootings or police harassment. During Reynolds' arraignment, Marcus watches his former mentor shuffle into court in handcuffs. The captain's downfall represents the end of an era of corruption, but also serves as a warning about power's ability to corrupt. Marcus implements new oversight procedures, determined to prevent history from repeating. Jamal's family returns home from protective custody. His mother sees the positive changes in the neighborhood: reduced crime, honest police presence, community engagement. She hugs him tightly, whispering, "Your brother would be proud." The words carry the weight of vindication for his chosen path. The department undergoes massive restructuring. Marcus and Jamal work together to establish new training protocols, emphasizing community, policing, and ethical decision-making. Young officers look up to them as examples of integrity prevailing against systemic corruption. In a private moment, Mike's sister thanks Jamal for giving her brother a chance at redemption. Though Mike faces prison time, his choice to help justice prevail offers him a path toward making amends. The childhood friendship, though changed forever, served a greater purpose in the end. Marcus receives the official promotion to captain, but his acceptance speech focuses on rebuilding community trust. He establishes regular town halls, transparency initiatives, and community oversight committees. The thin blue line transforms from a wall of silence into a bridge of accountability. The final scene unfolds at Tommy's Corner, where Jamal and Marcus watch kids playing basketball. A new generation grows up in a neighborhood where police serve rather than oppress, where justice means more than power. They've changed one small corner of the world, knowing their work will inspire others to fight corruption wherever it exists. Think we made a difference? Marcus asks, watching the neighborhood's renewed vitality. "We started something," Jamal responds, seeing hope where there was once only fear and distrust. The rest is up to them. The story ends not with a simple triumph, but with the realistic promise of continued progress. A community healing, a department reforming, and two men from opposite sides of the law proving that justice is worth fighting for, no matter the cost.